everyone, it's Erica Webb, and again my dog Flex, so he likes to participate. I'm going to see if I can work around him, see how we go. So I wanted to take you through a salute type of practice, but a really small one, and it's not a traditional salute. So your salutes to the sun, most people are familiar with. If you've done yoga, you might have seen it if you haven't. And they're lovely, they're great, but I think that they are hard to execute really well and in a way that's safe, particularly for the shoulders, particularly when we get to the little push-up bit, chaturanga. So they definitely have their place. I'm a fan, but it's not what I'm going to be teaching you right now. I'm going to give you something that's a little bit simpler, a little bit more accessible for people who, you know, don't want to work that way with the shoulders, or who are just starting out, or for people who just like to keep things simple, like me. So we're going to start. You don't even have to have a mat, you just want to have some space. We're going to be coming up into downward dog, so you just don't want it to slip. So if you've got a sticky mat, brilliant. So we'll start on hands and knees over the fur baby, and just start to alternate between rounding up through the spine and arching the spine. And as we do this, we want to start to get really curious about the way that the spine is actually moving. So for most of us, there'll be spots in the spine that move well and move a lot. And then there'll be other spots that are reluctant to or resistant to moving. So usually lumbar spine moves really well. It's used to doing this bendy stuff. Thoracic spine, so the bit here up between the shoulder blades, doesn't like it as much. So just start to get curious. Notice what it feels like as you alternate here. And then we're going to tuck the toes under at a neutral spine and keeping the knees nice and bent. Tip up into a downward facing dog. So you're in this inverted V. And keep the knees nice and bent. So we're starting off, you know, really gently with the body here. We're grounding down through the fingertips. And you're just going to have a little feel into what it's like to lengthen one leg and lengthen the other leg. Saying good morning or good afternoon or good evening to your hamstrings. Just noticing what it feels like. And if you've got high blood pressure, you'll keep your head lifted here. If it's normal, you can let it hang down. And then we're going to bend the knees again, bringing them all the way down onto the floor. And rest the bottom back onto the heels in child's pose. Now, depending on how much space you've got, you might rest your forehead on two stacked fists, or you might bring the forehead onto the floor. Good. And then come all the way back up onto all fours, and we'll repeat that sequence. So we're just alternating here between rounding up through the spine, arching through the spine. Again, getting really curious. How is it that the spine is moving? Is it possible to find more movement in the places that are reluctant, without push, without force, just feeling into them? And then as you come through a neutral spine, tucking the toes under, lifting the bottom up, and again just pedaling out through the heels. Now if downward dog feels like an unpleasant place to be, skip it, stay on all fours. Good, and then bringing the knees down onto the floor, and again pressing yourself back into child's pose. From there we can add a little bit more in, we can add a plank. So I'll show you what that looks like, keeping in mind that, you know, this bit's optional, you don't have to add anything in. So from here we can take again a couple of cat-cow movements. And then tuck the toes under, ready for your downward dog. Lift the bottom up. You might still be feeling good pedaling the heels, or you might start to think about just lengthening the heels, maybe even keeping the knees bent. Then we're going to bend into the knees, get lots of weight back into the balls of the feet, and imagine that your tailbone was drawing up towards your belly button, so it's scooping under, and we're going to wave forward into a plank pose. You might need to shuffle your feet back a little bit so that your hands land underneath your shoulders. If this feels really strong, you can straight away drop your knees. If you're comfy here, you can, comfy, if you're happy enough, you can stay up. And then we drop down onto the knees and press back into child's pose. And maybe do one more round if that's feeling nice. And you can do, if you've got 2 minutes up your sleeve and you think, oh, it'd be nice to just fit in a little bit of yoga, do 1 round, do 2 rounds. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to set aside 2 hours a day to do this stuff. So back into downward dog, getting lots of weight back, waving yourself forward, creeping the feet back a little bit if you need to find the space. And then back once more into child's pose. And when you finish, just roll yourself up onto your knees. And take a second to pause. Sometimes this is the bit where, you push stop on the video and you run away. Don't. Just pause. This is the bit where you start to get to understand how what you do physically impacts the way that you feel. So take the time to check, do you feel any different now than when you started? Physically, mentally, emotionally. Sometimes it doesn't take a lot just to create these little shifts. And I always like to just acknowledge the kindness that I've shown to myself after I've done the practice, whether it be for 2 minutes or 2 hours, which doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's nice. So take the time just to acknowledge that, to thank yourself for being so lovely. Namaste.